What's going on, guys? It's your girl Angie Snatch coming at you with an exclusive interview with journalist Tony Ortega discussing the RIZZA Islam case and Scientology. This is a great one. Let's get into it. Check it out. What's going on, guys? It's your girl Angie Snatch, and I am excited to have a special guest with me today, Mr. Tony Ortega, former editor of the Village Voice, creator of the underground bunker. He's been covering Scientology for 25 years, and he first broke the RIZZA Islam story that I talked about in episode 44 in 2015. So today I'm going to get into the mind of Scientology through the expert Tony Ortega. Let me welcome you to the show. Hi, Tony. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Angie.
Thank you for showing up. Thank you for coming. I emailed you. I said I cover Black conscious community. And when I first saw the story, I thought, okay, Nation of Islam. But as I went deeper, I said, no, it has more to do with the ties to Scientology and the Narcanon phenomenon than it does the Nation of Islam. But I wanted to start off with kind of what are the beliefs of Scientology?
Sure.
Just for
And let me make it clear, I was never a Scientologist. I never have been. I'm just a reporter who covers it. I'm curious about it. Scientology was started by a science fiction writer by the name of L. Ron Hubbard, who in 1950 claimed that he had come up with a new way of understanding the human mind. And what he said was essentially, the things that hold you back in your life today, the things that make things difficult for you, are caused by traumas you had earlier in your life, not just when you were younger, but even when you were a egg or a zygote or a fetus in the womb, and something happened to your mother while she was pregnant and knocked you unconscious. He's got all these crazy stories about if you can just remember what it was like to be in the womb and what it was like when you were born, you would be able to take away these traumas. And that was very popular in 1950, 51. Then later, that's called Dianetics. That idea is called Dianetics. Then later, he expanded it into something called Scientology, which is in order to find those traumas and lessen their effect, you actually have to go back much farther than your own birth, in fact, into previous lives. And so Scientologists spend years and years trying to remember things that happened to them millions of years ago, billions of years ago on other planets. And this is literally what they do and what they call auditing. If they can remember all those experiences going back millions of years, it can help release their potential today. And they really hold out the idea that if you can do this properly, you will get godlike superpowers. And they hold this out. People spend decades and millions of dollars trying to get to that goal.
so I found this picture of RIZZA Islam, and I think this is them doing auditing. Is that what's going on in this picture? Can you explain that for me, us?
Yeah, this is a very interesting photograph because this is the center in Compton that was the World Literacy Crusade, which was started by Alfredi Johnson and Riz's mother, Hanan Islam. She's in the picture there, back by the sign. And it was kind of a Scientology front group. People would come in there to help with various issues with literacy, with other things they were trying to help people with. They didn't. I think a lot of people went in there didn't even realize it was a Scientology facility, or affiliated with Scientology rather. And yeah, you see a picture there. That is RIZZA Islam using the Scientology e-meter with someone doing this kind of auditing.
So because Scientology has a predominantly white following, correct?
It's very, very white.
So when did that shift happen? And I find it odd for them to kind of have these affiliations with the Nation of Islam.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's traditionally been a very white organization, always a few non-white members, and I think Alfredi's involvement goes back to the LA riots. and he encountered some Scientologists, and he got involved. That's Alfredi in this picture. That's him on the left with Minister Farrakhan. And Alfredi describes himself as a Baptist preacher, but he is involved in Scientology. He's involved with the Nation of Islam, and he became a key to Scientology reaching out to the Black community. Um, Jason Begay is a former actor who was in Scientology, and he was telling me that he and Isaac Hayes were complaining to David Miscavige that Scientology was too white, that they needed to do things to increase outreach. But to reach out to the Nation of Islam is kind of a strange move because, it has control issues of its own. And it has its own sort of odd ideas about the origin of the universe and all that. So it's very curious that these two groups kind of found each other.
But can you practice a religion and be considered a Scientologist?
Well, Scientology, when L. Ron Hubbard first came out with his book Dianetics in 1950, the subtitle of that book is The Modern Science of Mental Health. And initially, Hubbard sold it as a science. It wasn't until later that he decided, at that point, things were not going very well for him. And there's actually a letter that exists where he was talking to a follower and said, let's try the religion angle. I mean, he literally said it that way, the religion angle. And so
Mm.
overnight, they became the Church of Scientology. And then they got tax exempt status initially. They lost it later. Then they fought the IRS to get it back in 1993. So Scientology today will tell you that it's a religion, that it's a church, but many of the old longtime members will tell you that inside Scientology, they just consider that window dressing for tax purposes, and they still think of it as a science. So yeah, so publicly they will tell you you can be Jewish and be a Scientologist, you can be Catholic and be a Scientologist, but inside Scientology they don't want you to do any other what they call other practices, and there's a lot of pressure on Scientologists not to be involved with any other churches or religions.
Hmm. So I want to go to the case against RIZZA Islam. First of all, to all of my followers, please go to the underground bunker. Go to TonyOrtega.org, right?
TonyOrtega.org. That's right.
TonyOrtega.org. I mean, he breaks it down way better than I do. It was a regurgitation of just studying your site and so many other sources. And I'm going to speak to Jeffrey Augustine, who reported for you
Yeah, he
and
goes to the court. Right.
was in the court.
Right. Yeah, it's
So,
a fascinating case. It I learned about it and started looking into it, and then I broke the news that Hanan, her son Rizza, one of Rizza's sisters, and then some other people that worked for the family had all been charged with felonies. And I had some detail about what went down, but then there was actually, this was 2015, 2019, 4 years later, they had a preliminary hearing. And what happens in a preliminary hearing is that the government puts on witnesses enough evidence to convince a judge that there's a reason to justify having an actual trial. So it's not a full blown trial. It's only I think it was a day or two, and it was just to put up enough evidence to convince the judge. So this is when we really learned the government's case in some detail. What they said happened was that at that point, this was the actual crime was supposedly occurring between about 2009 and 2013. Um, Alfredi Johnson and Hannah and Alfredi. Let me make it real clear. Alfredi has not been charged with any crimes. Okay,
yeah, I'm
but
going to ask you about that in a minute because I
but
don't understand that at all.
right. So Alfredi and Hanan had set up this center in Compton called the World Literacy Crusade, and in it they had put one of Scientology's Narcanon drug rehab clinics. This is Scientology has various front groups. One of them is this network of rehabs that where they use this cold turkey technique, and they really don't give you drug counseling. They teach you Scientology. So they were doing that, and they had figured out. the Islams had figured out that they could actually bill Medi-Cal for every person that they treated in that drug rehab. In order to get that money, they needed some records of individuals who had gone through the program. So people come in, do the drug rehab, there's a report written, then the Islams could submit that to the state and get paid by the state.
Mhm.
So what they had done, according to the government, was they had created a partnership with some local high schools.
Mm.
And the high schools were sending students over to the clinic. RIZZA was working with these students to give them some kind, they would have them watch a video and stuff. And the allegation is that RIZZA and some other people they hired wrote up reports as if all these high school students were drug addicts who were going through the clinic. They weren't. They're just high school kids that just came over because they were told to go there by some
Mhm.
educators who were in on the scam. And so three educators lost their jobs, two principals and the coach of the legendary Dominguez Hills football team. All lost their jobs because they were part of the scam. They were sending the kids over. And then these false reports were being written, submitted to the state, and the government claims that over several years, the Islams were able to get almost $4 million out of the state of California with this bogus rehab scam working out of this Scientology clinic. So that's why they're charged with felonies. That's why this is not just, I mean, this is serious crime.
Yeah.
And Hanan, the mother, faces the most counts, I guess because they consider her the ringleader.
I was about to say, because I find her very interesting that it's her children, her network, and as well as her relationship with Alfredi Johnson.
She has quite a history. I mean, this is not her first felony charge. She's been charged in the past. And so that's why she could be really facing a serious sentence because once you start piling up multiple felonies, that's when the judges tend to throw the book at you. So she's got a history of, I mean,
All right, Snatch Gang. So this concludes part one of my interview with Tony Ortega. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe this video. I'm going to do a part two, and I'm also interviewing, don't forget, with Jeffrey Augustine, who is the ex-Scientologist that was actually in the courtroom. You guys let me know what you think. It's your girl, Angie Snatch. Oh, wait. Thank you so much to Barbershop Conversation. I would not have started covering this case if it wasn't for you shooting me emails like, Angie, I think you should cover this. So shout out to you. Thank you, Just You, for the Cash App. I just want to say thank you. Enjoy your weekend, guys. Let me know what you think. It's your girl, Angie Snatch.